Imagine a land where ancient Moorish palaces watch over cities that never quite sleep, where the scent of orange blossoms drifts through narrow streets at midnight, and where the gentle sound of flamenco guitar echoes from tavern windows long after the rest of Europe has gone to bed. You cannot think of this country without seeing the fairy tale spires of Sagrada Familia reaching toward Barcelona's sky, or the golden light falling across the Alhambra's courtyards. You imagine the white villages of Andalusia clinging to hillsides, and the endless rows of olive trees stretching toward distant mountains. But tonight, we are not here for the crowds or the noise. We are here for the moment when the last cafe closes its doors, when the plaza fountains sing to empty squares, and when the old stones breathe out the warmth they have held all day. We will walk the halls of the Alhambra when they are silent. Listen to the night wind move through Toledo's medieval streets, and find the hidden corners that daylight tourists never see, and you will experience it all without leaving your bed. This evening, we are traveling to Spain. If you are ready to rest, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more journeys into sleep. And I would love to know, from which part of the world are you listening tonight? Let me know in the comments. Now, let's begin. We board the night train as the last evening light fades over the Pyrenees. The platform is nearly empty. Just a few late travelers finding their compartments, their footsteps soft against old tiles. Through the window, you can see the mountains turning purple in the dusk, their peaks still holding snow, even though spring has arrived in the valleys below. The train begins to move, gentle and unhurried, and the rhythm of the wheels becomes a lullaby as we head south toward the Mediterranean coast. The compartment is warm, lit by a single lamp that casts amber light across wooden panels. Outside, the landscape begins to shift. We pass through small villages where church bells mark the hour, their sound fading behind us as we continue. The air through the open window carries the scent of pine forests and distant rain, though the sky above remains clear and filled with stars. As we descend from the mountains, the temperature rises by degrees. The pines give way to olive groves, their silver-green leaves catching moonlight. Between the trees, you can see old farmhouses, their windows dark, their walls the color of honey even in darkness. This is Catalonia, where the land meets the sea, and where our first stop waits in the quiet hours before dawn. The train slows as we approach Barcelona. Through the window, the city appears as a constellation of lights spreading between mountains and water. We step onto the platform at Estació de França, where the air smells of salt from the Mediterranean and bread from bakeries that never close. The station's iron and glass ceiling arches overhead, built in the 19th century, when trains were still new and mysterious. At this hour, the vast hall is nearly silent, our footsteps the only sound against its marble floors. We walk through streets that curve and climb, following routes that were laid down long before cars existed. The buildings here are different from anywhere else in Europe. Their facades ripple and flow like living things. Their balconies twist into organic shapes. Their rooftops are covered in mosaics that glitter even under streetlights. This is the work of Antoni Gaudí, an architect who looked at straight lines and decided nature had a better idea. Above us, rising into the night sky, stands the Sagrada Familia. Even unfinished, even in darkness, it commands the skyline. Construction began in 1882, And still, the cranes work during daylight hours, adding stone to stone, following Gaudi's original designs. He knew he would never see it completed. When someone asked him about the slow pace, he simply said that his client, meaning God, was not in a hurry. The building seems to grow from the earth rather than sit upon it. Its towers reach upward like trees, each one carved with such detail that you could study a single column for hours and still find new patterns. Gaudi believed that nature was the greatest architect, so he copied her methods. The columns inside branch like a forest canopy, supporting the roof the way tree trunks support their leaves. Even the acoustics were planned. The space inside amplifies sound in a way that makes a single voice seem like a choir. Tonight, the building is closed, but through the gates, you can see light glowing through stained glass windows. The colors shift across stone. Deep blues and rich reds, patterns that change depending on where you stand. Gaudi designed each window to capture light at different times of day, so the building would never look the same twice. In darkness, the effect is gentler, like watching colored light move through water. We linger for a while, listening to the silence before the train calls us back. The Mediterranean waits, stretching dark and calm beyond the city lights. We board again as the first hint of dawn touches the eastern horizon, though true sunrise is still hours away. The train follows the coastline now, and through the window you can see the sea, its surface smooth as glass, reflecting starlight. The landscape changes as we move south. The rocky Catalan coast gives way to sandy beaches and palm trees, though at this hour, the beaches are empty except for the occasional gull picking through the tide line. The air grows warmer, carrying the scent of orange blossoms from groves that appear between the towns. This is Valencia, where the land is flat and fertile, where rice fields stretch inland and the Turia River once flowed before being redirected around the city. We arrive as church bells mark 4 in the morning. Valencia sleeps deeply at this hour, its old quarter wrapped in shadows. The streets here are narrow, built in the medieval period, when defense mattered more than convenience. We walk along walls that are 800 years old, their stones worn smooth by centuries of hands trailing along them. Somewhere in the distance, a fountain runs, its water moving through channels that the Moors designed when this was still part of their kingdom. The city's central market will not open for hours yet, but even in darkness, you can sense its presence. A vast building of iron and glass, filled with stalls that sell everything from fresh fish to saffron. The merchants here follow rhythms set generations ago. They arrive before dawn, arrange their goods in patterns passed down from their grandparents, and speak in a dialect of Valencian that is almost musical in its cadence. But we are moving inland now, away from the coast, climbing into the hills where the air turns cooler and the scent of the sea fades behind us. The train carries us through the night, past terraced fields where farmers once grew grapes and almonds, past villages so small they do not appear on most maps. The landscape is ancient here, shaped by hands that worked before Rome existed, before written history began recording such things. As we climb higher, the vegetation changes. Orange groves give way to cork oak forests, their trunks stripped of bark in patterns that look like maps of unknown countries. Every 9 years, workers harvest the cork, peeling it away in great sheets that will eventually become wine stoppers and bulletin boards. The trees themselves do not mind. they simply grow more bark, patient and generous, their roots reaching deep into red soil. We are approaching Granada now, though the city is still hidden behind mountain ridges. The train slows as it navigates switchbacks, climbing steadily toward the plateau where the city waits. Outside, the darkness is complete, except for our own lights reflecting off the window. This is the hour when night is deepest, when even the most restless sleepers find peace, when the world holds its breath before the first birds begin their songs. The train stops at a small station on the city's edge. We step out into air that smells of jasmine and distant wood smoke. Above us, invisible in darkness, but present nonetheless, the Sierra Nevada rises, its peaks still holding snow, even though spring has warmed the valleys. These mountains are the reason Granada exists. Their snowmelt feeds rivers that flow through the city, making this desert bloom. We walk through streets that climb steadily upward. The buildings here are white or pale cream, their walls thick to keep out summer heat and winter cold. Occasionally, through an open gate, you can glimpse a courtyard, a private oasis with a fountain, potted plants, and tile work in blue and white patterns. These patios are the soul of Andalusian homes, places where families gather in the evening when the heat finally breaks. The path grows steeper as we approach the Alhambra. This palace was built on a hill for reasons both practical and symbolic. It overlooks the entire city, visible from nearly every street, a reminder of the power that once ruled here. The Nasrid dynasty constructed most of what we will see, adding to it generation by generation, each sultan leaving his mark in carved plaster and flowing water. We reach the gate as the sky begins to shift from black to deep blue. The Alhambra waits, its walls the color of sand, its towers outlined against the coming dawn. During the day, thousands of visitors walk these halls, but at this hour, we have it nearly to ourselves. Our footsteps echo against stone as we pass through archways carved with Arabic script, poetry praising water, light, and the gardens of paradise. The secret of the Alhambra is not its beauty, though it is beautiful. The secret is its engineering. In the 14th century, engineers diverted an entire river to flow through these grounds. They built channels so precise that water could climb upward through the palace, defying what seemed possible, moving from fountain to fountain without the need for pumps or machinery. The method was elegant, each channel tilted at an exact angle to maintain pressure. Each turn was calculated to keep the water flowing without losing momentum. The system was so well designed that it still works today, 700 years later, with only minor repairs. On summer nights, when Granada's heat settles like a blanket over the city, these fountains cool the air by 10 degrees, turning the palace into an oasis. We enter the Court of Lions, where 12 marble lions support a central fountain. Water flows from their mouths, feeds into channels that divide the courtyard into 4 sections, then disappears into underground pipes that carry it to other parts of the palace. The mathematics involved are complex. Each lion releases water at precisely the same rate, ensuring perfect balance. The sound is constant, but never monotonous, a gentle background music that makes the space feel alive. The columns surrounding the courtyard are slender, almost impossibly so. They seem too delicate to support the weight of the arches above them, yet they have stood for centuries. The plasterwork between the columns is carved in patterns that repeat, but never quite the same way twice. Geometric shapes interlock, with floral designs, and woven through everything are lines of poetry, barely visible in the pre-dawn light. One poem describes how the fountain's water is like liquid silver flowing over pearls. Another compares the palace to a garden where the boundaries between indoors and outdoors disappear. The poets who wrote these lines understood something about the power of water in a dry land. It represents life itself, precious and sustaining, worth celebrating in permanent form. We move through halls where the walls are covered floor to ceiling with tile work, azulejos in patterns of blue, green, white, and gold. Each tile was made by hand, its glaze mixed from minerals found in nearby mountains. The patterns follow Islamic geometric principles, where repeating shapes create the illusion of infinite space. Stare at them long enough, and your eye begins to trace paths that seem to move and shift, though nothing actually changes. In the Hall of Ambassadors, the ceiling soars high above us, carved from cedar wood, brought from Lebanon. 8,000 pieces fit together to form a star pattern that represents the 7 heavens of Islamic cosmology. The wood still smells faintly of the oils used to preserve it, a scent that has lingered for 600 years. Light enters through windows set with colored glass, casting patterns across the floor that move as slowly as the sun itself. The kings who ruled from this room received ambassadors from all over the known world. They sat on cushions placed where the light fell just so, arranged to make them appear both approachable and impossibly distant. The acoustics were designed to amplify their voices, making even a whisper carry to the far corners. Everything about this space was calculated to inspire awe. And even now, empty and silent, it succeeds. We step out onto a balcony overlooking the general life, the summer palace where the royal family retreated when the heat of the main palace became too much. Below us, gardens cascade down the hillside in terraces. Water flows through them in channels, feeding pools and fountains, disappearing into underground passages before emerging again. The gardens are dark now, but you can hear the water moving, constant and patient, following paths it has known for centuries. The gardeners who tend this place work in the early morning before visitors arrive. They prune the cypress trees into perfect columns, trim the myrtles into hedges, and ensure that the fountains run clear. Their work is invisible. The goal is to make the garden appear wild and natural, as if no human hand had shaped it, even though every plant and stone is precisely placed. As dawn approaches, the sky begins to lighten, turning from deep blue to pale grey. We can see the city below us now, its white buildings spreading across the valley, its streets beginning to wake. Somewhere, a rooster crows. In a nearby house, shutters open. The night is ending, but our journey continues. We return to the train as the first sunlight touches the mountain peaks. The platform is still quiet, though a few early travelers have appeared, clutching coffee cups and newspapers. We find our compartment and settle in as the train begins to move, carrying us deeper into Andalusia, towards cities where the Moorish influence runs even deeper than in Granada. The landscape outside grows drier as we travel. The green valleys around Granada give way to olive groves that stretch to the horizon in every direction. These trees are ancient, many of them planted centuries ago, their trunks thick and gnarled, their branches twisted into shapes that seem almost human. During harvest season, workers spread nets beneath them and beat the branches with long poles, letting the olives fall like dark rain. But harvest is months away. Now, in spring, the trees are in bloom, their tiny white flowers almost invisible against silver-green leaves. The scent carries through the train window, subtle and clean, like distant rain. Below the trees, the soil is red, iron-rich, the same color as the tiles that roof houses throughout this region. We pass through small towns where nothing moves except cats sunning themselves on warm stone walls. The houses are white with wrought iron balconies, painted green or blue. Laundry hangs motionless in still air. In window boxes, geraniums bloom in shades of pink and red. These towns have existed for centuries, their populations rising and falling with economic tides, their daily rhythms unchanged by the modern world rushing past, on rails. The train slows as we approach Cordoba. This city was once the largest in Western Europe, home to 500,000 people when London was barely a town. It was a center of learning and culture, where scholars from 3 faiths, Muslim, Christian, and Jewish, exchanged ideas and created works that would influence the world for centuries. That golden age is long past, but traces of it remain in the city's bones. We arrive as morning light turns the buildings golden. The station is small and graceful, its architecture echoing the Moorish style that defines this city. We step onto the platform and immediately feel the difference in temperature. Cordoba sits in a river valley where summer heat can reach 120 degrees, though in spring, the mornings are merely warm. The Guadalquivir River flows through the city's heart, its water the color of coffee with milk, carrying sediment from mountains far upstream. A Roman bridge crosses it, still solid after 2,000 years of floods and wars. The bridge has 16 arches, each one slightly different because repairs over centuries used whatever materials were available. To walk across it is to touch 16 different moments in history, each arch a window to a different era. But we are heading inland, away from the river, through the old Jewish quarter, where streets are so narrow that 2 people cannot walk abreast. The buildings lean toward each other, overhead, creating tunnels of shadow, even at midday. The stones beneath our feet are worn into shallow bowls by countless footsteps. Around corners, we catch glimpses of patios through iron gates. Explosions of flowers in terracotta pots, fountains trickling into blue-tiled basins, canaries singing in cages hung from rafters. We arrive at the Mezquita, the mosque cathedral that defines Cordoba. From outside, it appears as a massive fortress, its walls blank and forbidding, but this exterior severity hides an interior of impossible beauty. We enter through doors heavy enough to require both hands to push open, and step into a forest made of stone. 856 columns rise from the floor, each one supporting double arches in stripes of red brick and white stone. The pattern repeats in every direction, creating the illusion that the space extends forever. Your eye cannot find the walls. Everywhere you look, there are more columns, more arches, more pathways disappearing into shadow. The builders achieved something remarkable here. They took the finite and made it feel infinite. The columns themselves were salvaged from older buildings, Roman temples, Visigothic churches, structures that had stood for centuries before being repurposed for this new faith. Some are marble, some granite, some jasper. No 2 are quite the same height, so the builders used different thickness of stone in the arches above them to create level rows. It is engineering disguised as art. Function hidden within beauty. Light enters through windows placed high in the walls, filtered through screens of carved stone that break the sunlight into patterns. The effect is like standing beneath a tree canopy, where light falls in dappled patches, moving slowly as the sun crosses the sky. In the 8th century, when this mosque was built, the builders wanted to recreate the palm groves of their homeland in Arabia. They succeeded so well that even now, the space feels more garden than building. We walk slowly between the columns, our footsteps absorbed by the vast space above us. The ceiling is made of cypress wood, dark with age, carved in geometric patterns that seem to shift and flow as we pass beneath them. Somewhere in the distance, voices echo. Other visitors, perhaps. Or maybe just the building's own sounds bouncing between columns. In the center of the mosque, incongruous and fascinating, sits a Catholic cathedral. In the 16th century, after the Christian reconquest of Spain, the ruling powers decided to convert the mosque into a church. Rather than tear it down and start fresh, they simply inserted a cathedral into its heart, leaving the columns standing around it. The result is architecturally bizarre and oddly moving. Two faiths existing in the same space, neither one fully dominant. The cathedral is ornate in the European style. Carved choir stalls, painted retablos, a dome that reaches toward heaven. But step 20 feet in any direction, and you are back among the columns, back in the mosque's embrace. The building refuses to choose a single identity, and perhaps that is fitting for a city that was once home to so many traditions living side by side. We find a quiet corner, away from the central cathedral, and simply stand for a while. The air inside is cool, almost cold, a stark contrast to the warmth building outside. You can hear water flowing somewhere, a holdover from the mosque's original design, when fountains in the courtyard provided water for ritual, washing before prayers. That courtyard still exists, though now it is planted with orange trees, their fruit ripening slowly through the long Andalusian summer. Time moves differently in here. Minutes stretch and compress. We could stay for hours or leave after moments, and either would feel exactly right. But the train waits, and our journey is far from over. We make our way back through the forest of columns, back towards sunlight and the continuing rhythm of steel wheels on rails. Outside, the city is waking fully now. Shopkeepers roll up metal shutters. The scent of frying churros drifts from cafes. Schoolchildren in uniforms hurry past, their voices bright and sharp in morning air. But we are already moving away, the train carrying us west, following the river towards Seville. The land here is flat, stretching away in all directions, broken only by the occasional hill or distant ridge. The soil is rich and dark, perfect for agriculture. We pass fields of wheat turning gold in the sun, rows of sunflowers, not yet in bloom, and everywhere, more olive groves. Spain produces half the world's olive oil, and much of it comes from this region, from trees that produce fruit the way other plants produce leaves. Abundantly and without complaint. Between the fields, you can see farmhouses painted white with red tile roofs. These cortijos were built as fortified farms, self-sufficient communities that produced everything their residents needed. Many are abandoned now, their residents having moved to cities for work, but some remain occupied, their owners continuing traditions that stretch back to the time of Al-Andalus. The train slows as we approach Seville. This is Andalusia's capital, a city of oranges and flamenco, of bullfighting and Holy Week processions. But at this hour, it is simply a collection of buildings along a river, still rubbing sleep from its eyes, still deciding what kind of day it will be. We step onto the platform at Santa Justa Station, a small modern building that tries to echo Moorish design in steel and glass. Outside, the air is noticeably warmer than it was in Cordoba. Seville sits in a river valley where summer temperatures regularly exceed 110 degrees, where afternoon siestas are not a quaint tradition, but a survival strategy. We make our way through streets that widen as we approach the city center. Unlike the medieval tangles of Cordoba or Granada, much of Seville was built during its golden age in the 16th century, when treasure from the Americas flowed through its port and funded grand building projects. The streets were planned, the plazas designed to impress, the buildings constructed to last centuries. But we are not heading for the famous cathedral or the royal palace. Instead, we turn into the Barrio Santa Cruz, the old Jewish quarter where streets narrow again and the modern world seems to fall away. Here, the buildings are painted in shades of cream and yellow, their walls covered with flowering vines. Iron balconies overflow with potted plants. Through open doorways, you can glimpse patios tiled in blue and white, cooled by fountains that trickle day and night. In these patios, Sevillanos have perfected the art of living with heat. The floor is covered in smooth stones that stay cool even when the sun is fierce. The walls are thick enough to block the afternoon heat. Awnings provide shade, and the fountain, always a fountain, cools the air through evaporation. At night, these patios become outdoor living rooms where families eat dinner at 10 o'clock, talk until midnight, and sleep with shutters open to catch any breeze. We find a small plaza shaded by orange trees. The trees were planted in rows, their branches trained to create a canopy that blocks the sun. In spring, they bloom, and the scent is so powerful, it seems almost visible. Right now, the flowers are fading, replaced by small green oranges that will ripen slowly over the coming months. These are bitter oranges, inedible raw, but perfect for marmalade. Every winter, British companies send buyers to Seville to purchase the harvest. The fruit is shipped to England, cooked with sugar, and spread on toast in breakfast rooms across the United Kingdom. It is an odd connection, Seville's inedible oranges becoming a staple of British mornings. But trade has always created strange partnerships. We sit on a bench in the shade, listening to the fountain in the plaza's center. The water flows from a tile-covered pillar, fills a basin, then drains away into underground pipes that carry it to other fountains across the city. Seville's relationship with water is complex. The city sits in a floodplain where the Guadalquivir can rise 15 feet in a single day. But summers are brutally dry, with months passing between rainstorms. Managing water, storing it, channeling it, preserving it, has always been essential to survival here. A cat appears from beneath a parked car, stretches in a patch of sunlight, then settles near the fountain to sleep. Seville is famous for its cats, descendants of animals brought by the Phoenicians 3,000 years ago. They roam freely, living in colonies centered around food sources. Markets, restaurants, the dumpsters behind apartment buildings. The city tolerates them, feeds them, takes them to vets when needed. In return, the cats keep the rat population manageable and add to the general sense that Seville exists at a slightly different pace than the rest of the world. Time passes. The plaza fills with morning light. Somewhere nearby, a church bell rings once, marking the half hour. We rise and continue walking, letting the narrow streets lead us wherever they will. This is the best way to see Seville, without maps or plans, simply following curiosity and the angle of the shade. We turn a corner and find ourselves facing the cathedral, impossible to miss even if we had tried. It is the largest Gothic cathedral in the world, built on the site of a mosque, incorporating the mosque's minaret as a bell tower. The Giralda, as the tower is called, dominates the skyline. A square column rising 300 feet, topped with a bronze statue that turns with the wind and gives the tower its name. The cathedral itself is vast almost beyond comprehension. To walk around its exterior takes 15 minutes. Inside, it could swallow a dozen smaller churches and still have room to spare. The ceiling vaults so high above that rain clouds have been known to form inside on humid days. The altar is a wall of gold-covered wood, carved with scenes from the life of Christ. Each figure, life-sized. Each panel, a masterpiece of 15th century craftsmanship. But what draws the eye, what makes even skeptics pause, is the tomb of Christopher Columbus. His remains rest in a casket carried by 4 bronze statues representing the kingdoms of Spain. The statues are life-sized, their faces solemn, their robes flowing in frozen bronze. Whether the bones inside are actually Columbus's is a matter of some debate. DNA testing has been inconclusive, but the monument itself is magnificent, regardless of whose remains it honors. We walk through the cathedral's cool interior, past side chapels dedicated to various saints, past the choir stalls where monks once sang the hours, past stained glass windows that turn sunlight into liquid color. The building is so large that parts of it remain in permanent shadow, lit only by candles that have burned continuously for centuries. Outside again, we find the Patio de los Naranjos, the courtyard of orange trees. This was the mosque's courtyard, the place where worshippers washed before prayers. Now it is a garden, peaceful and shaded, with a fountain at its center that has flowed for over 1,000 years. The orange trees are perfectly spaced, their branches forming a ceiling of green. In autumn, when the fruit ripens, the ground beneath them is carpeted with fallen oranges that no one bothers to pick up. The train calls us back. We make our way through streets that are beginning to fill with tourists and locals alike, back to the station where our compartment waits. The locomotive sits at the platform, steam rising from its undercarriage, ready to carry us north toward Madrid and the heart of Spain. As we board, the conductor checks his pocket watch, a tradition that persists even though digital clocks are everywhere. The watch is silver, worn smooth by decades of handling, attached to a chain that disappears into his vest pocket. He nods to us. We step aboard, and moments later, we are moving again. The landscape changes as we travel north. The flat river valleys of Andalusia give way to rolling hills, then to proper mountains. The vegetation shifts from olive groves to oak forests, from agricultural land to wilderness. We are climbing onto the Meseta Central, the vast plateau that dominates the interior of Spain. This is harsh country, beautiful in an austere way. In summer, it bakes under relentless sun. In winter, snow blankets the ground for months. The people who live here are famously hardy, shaped by a land that gives grudgingly and demands constant work. Their villages are stone, built to withstand weather that can shift from calm to violent in hours. We pass through one such village. a cluster of houses around a church, its plaza empty, except for a few old men sitting in the shade. The church is Romanesque, built in the 12th century, its stones the color of honey. The door is open, and even from the moving train, we can see inside to where candles flicker before an altar that has held candles for 900 years. The train climbs steadily. Outside, the air grows cooler. We are ascending toward Madrid, which sits at over 2,000 feet above sea level, high enough that winter snow is common and summer nights turn pleasantly cool. The city began as a Moorish fortress, chosen for its strategic position overlooking the surrounding plains. From the fortress walls, sentries could see for miles in every direction, giving ample warning of approaching armies. That fortress is long gone, replaced by a royal palace and sprawling urban development. But Madrid's elevation remains, giving it a climate unlike any other major European capital. Hot in summer, but never humid. Cold in winter, but rarely bitterly so, with skies that are clear and blue more than 300 days a year. We arrive at Atocha station in late afternoon. The station is famous for its interior garden, a tropical greenhouse built in the original 19th century train shed. Palm trees rise 3 stories high. Ferns and flowers fill planters. Turtles swim in ponds where koi flash orange and white. The air inside is warm and humid, a stark contrast to the dry air outside. We exit into Plaza del Emperador Carlos V, where traffic circles a fountain and pedestrians hurry in all directions. Madrid is Spain's capital, its political and cultural heart, and the energy here is different from the slower rhythms of Andalusia. People move with purpose. Restaurants are packed. Street performers compete for attention in every plaza. But we are not here for the busy parts of Madrid. We walk away from the center, through neighborhoods where laundry hangs from balconies and children play football in small parks. We are heading for the Prado Museum, which holds one of the world's greatest collections of European art, assembled over centuries by Spanish royalty. The museum building is neoclassical, all columns and symmetry, built in the late 18th century. Inside, the walls are covered floor to ceiling with paintings. Spanish masters like Velázquez and Goya, Flemish painters like Rubens and Bosch, Italian works by Titian and Tintoretto. To properly see everything would take days. We find ourselves in front of Las Meninas, Velázquez's masterpiece. The painting shows the Infanta Margarita, Teresa surrounded by her attendants, her parents reflected in a mirror in the background, and Velázquez himself, standing at his easel, painting the very scene we are looking at. It is a work that folds reality back on itself, raising questions about who is watching whom, what is real and what is reflection. The painting is large, life-sized, and the figures seem almost ready to step out of the frame. The light in the painting comes from a window on the left, and Velázquez painted it so accurately that you can almost feel the warmth of that sunlight. Art historians have studied this work for centuries, debating its meanings and marveling at its technical perfection. But standing in front of it, what strikes you most is how alive it feels, how present the figures seem, how the painted eyes seem to follow you as you move. We continue through galleries filled with Goya's work, his bright, cheerful early paintings of picnics and festivals, and his dark later works showing wars, brutality, and humanity's capacity for cruelty. The contrast is stark and unsettling. Goya witnessed the Napoleonic invasion of Spain, saw his country torn apart by war, and his art changed accordingly. The lake paintings are nightmares made visible, warnings about what humans can do to each other when fear and power mix. But there is beauty here too. Goya's portraits show his subjects with uncommon honesty. The royal family he painted does not appear particularly regal. They look human, flawed, real. A duchess is shown as intelligent and strong-willed rather than merely pretty. A matador's fear shows through his bravado. Goya saw people clearly and painted what he saw. Royal patronage be damned. Outside the museum, evening is settling over Madrid. The sky turns pink and gold, then purple, then deep blue. Street lamps flicker on. The temperature drops noticeably, that altitude making itself felt. We walk back toward the station through the Retiro Park, where families are taking evening strolls and couples rowboats across an ornamental lake. The park was created in the 17th century as royal gardens, private grounds where the king could walk without encountering common people. Now it belongs to everyone. On weekends, it fills with performers, musicians, dancers, puppet shows, fortune tellers. But tonight, it is quiet. The paths lit by old-fashioned lamps that cast golden pools of light on gravel paths. We reach the Crystal Palace, a greenhouse built entirely of glass and iron. Inside, temporary art installations rotate every few months, but the building itself is the real attraction. It sits beside a small lake, and its reflection in the still water doubles its beauty. At this hour, with the interior lit, it glows like a lantern, its Victorian elegance somehow both delicate and solid. The train awaits. We board as the last light fades from the western sky. Our compartment is warm and welcoming, a refuge from the cooling night air. The train begins to move, carrying us away from Madrid, heading north towards cities older than the capital, toward places where Rome left its mark in stone. The landscape outside the window fades into darkness as we travel. Occasionally, lights from a village flash past, or the silhouette of a castle appears on the hilltop. But mostly, we see only our own reflection in the glass and the stars above. The rhythm of the wheels is hypnotic, steady, a heartbeat carrying us forward through the night. We are heading toward Toledo, a city so perfectly medieval that entire neighborhoods look unchanged since the 15th century. The city sits on a hill surrounded on three sides by the Tagus River, making it naturally defensible. This geography shaped its history. For centuries, Toledo was fought over by Christians, Muslims, and Jews, each group leaving architectural and cultural marks that persist to this day. The train stops at Toledo Station well after midnight. We step out into air that smells of stone and the river. The city above us is dark, most of its residents asleep, its famous buildings invisible in the night. We climb cobblestone streets that are too narrow for cars, following routes that medieval pilgrims walked on their way to Santiago de Compostela. The streets twist and turn, deliberately confusing. This was defensive architecture. An invading army would get lost in these lanes, while defenders, who knew every turn, could attack from unexpected directions. Now the same streets serve a different purpose, creating pockets of quiet even in the middle of a tourist city, offering corners where you can stand and feel transported backward through time. We arrive at the cathedral, though from outside you would barely know it is there. The building is hemmed in by other structures, built during an era when land inside the city walls was too precious to waste on plazas. The only way to see the cathedral's exterior properly is to look up from specific streets, catching glimpses of Gothic spires and flying buttresses between the surrounding buildings. Inside, the space opens up impossibly. The cathedral contains 5 naves, with ceilings that soar high enough to create their own weather systems. The main altar is a wall of gold and painted wood, rising almost to the ceiling, covered with hundreds of carved figures. It took 7 years to complete, employed a team of carvers and painters, and has been described as one of the greatest achievements of Spanish Gothic art. But what makes Toledo's cathedral unique is the transparent, a Baroque altarpiece that sits directly behind the main altar. The architects cut a hole in the ceiling above it, allowing natural light to pour down onto the sculpture. The effect is theatrical. Beams of sunlight illuminate marble angels and painted clouds, creating an illusion of heaven opening above the altar. In the 18th century, when it was built, visitors were astonished. Even now, it has the power to make people stop and stare. We walk through the sacristy, which functions as an art museum. The walls are covered with paintings by El Greco, the painter who made Toledo famous in the 16th century. His style is immediately recognizable. Elongated figures, dramatic lighting, colors that seem to vibrate with emotion. He painted Toledo obsessively, capturing its light and atmosphere in canvases that are more emotional than realistic. One painting shows a view of Toledo from across the river. The city rises on its hill, the cathedral dominant, the sky behind it full of storm clouds shot through with eerie light. El Greco exaggerated the building's height and compressed the distances, creating a version of Toledo that is more intense than reality, but somehow truer to the feeling of the place. We leave the cathedral and wander through streets that are completely empty. Our footsteps echo off stone walls. Occasionally, a cat appears, regards us with feline indifference, and disappears around a corner. Above, windows are dark. The city sleeps deeply, resting before tomorrow brings new crowds of visitors. We find ourselves at the Alcazar, the fortress that dominates Toledo's highest point. Originally built by the Romans, it has been destroyed and rebuilt multiple times, most recently after the Spanish Civil War, when it was nearly reduced to rubble during a siege. The current building is a reconstruction, faithful to the historical design, but clearly modern in its construction methods. From the Alcazar's walls, you can see the entire city spread below. A tumble of terracotta roofs, church towers, narrow streets, and hidden plazas. Beyond the city, the river curves in its gorge, and beyond that, the plains of Castile stretch to the horizon. In daylight, the view is spectacular. In darkness, it is merely suggested, an idea of landscape, rather than the landscape itself. The train calls us back. We descend through sleeping streets, return to the station, and board as a church clock somewhere strikes 3. The train moves slowly at first, navigating the hills around Toledo, then picks up speed as we reach flat ground and turn north. We are heading towards Segovia, another city built on a hill, another place where Roman engineering still shapes daily life. The journey takes us through farmland that is slowly giving way to pine forests. We are approaching the base of the Sierra de Guadarrama, the mountain range that separates Madrid from the northern parts of Spain. Dawn is approaching. You can feel it rather than see it, a subtle shift in the darkness, a sense that the night is thinning. The stars fade one by one. The sky turns from black to charcoal to grey. By the time we reach Segovia, the sun is just touching the eastern horizon, turning the clouds pink and gold. The city appears before us, like something from a fairy tale. The cathedral rises above red-tiled roofs. The Alcazar sits at the western edge of the ridge, its towers and turrets looking like they belong in a Disney movie. And cutting across the valley, impossible and beautiful, the Roman aqueduct carries water into the city the same way it has for 2,000 years. We step off the train into cold morning air. Segovia sits at 4,000 feet, high enough that frost is possible, even in late spring. We can see our breath as we walk toward the aqueduct. The streets are empty, except for a few delivery trucks and bakery workers arriving before dawn to start their ovens. The aqueduct is even more impressive up close. It stands over 90 feet tall at its highest point, built entirely of granite blocks fitted together without mortar. The Romans constructed it in the 1st century CE, hauling stones from quarries 10 miles away and stacking them with such precision that they have stayed in place through earthquakes, floods, and wars. The engineering is elegant in its simplicity. Water flows from mountain springs into a collection point, then travels through channels set at exactly the right slope to maintain constant pressure. The aqueduct itself is the most visible part of the system, but miles of underground pipes and channels complete the network. In its heyday, it brought 8 million gallons of water per day into Segovia, enough to supply a city of 50,000 people. The aqueduct was still in use until the mid-20th century, though by then it was supplemented by modern pumping stations. Today, it carries no water. The wear from 2,000 years of flow required that it be retired, but it remains Segovia's symbol, featured on everything from postcards to the city's coat of arms. We walk beneath one of the arches, our footsteps echoing in the stone chamber. The blocks are rough cut, showing the marks of the tools that shaped them. Graffiti from different eras is carved into the stone. Roman numerals, medieval crosses, 19th century initials. Each mark is a tiny piece of history, evidence that people have been stopping to look at this structure with wonder for 2,000 years. Above us, the sky continues to brighten. The stones of the aqueduct turn golden in the rising sun, the shadows between blocks creating sharp lines of contrast. This is the best time to see it. Early morning, when the light is soft and the streets are empty, when you can stand beneath these arches and imagine the workers who built them, calculating angles and hoisting stones, creating something that would outlast their empire by 1,500 years. We continue into the old city, climbing streets that switch back up the hill. The buildings here are medieval, their walls covered with a distinctive decoration called esgrafiado, plaster incised with geometric patterns that create texture and shadow. Each building's pattern is different, and the cumulative effect as you walk down a street is mesmerizing. The cathedral appears as we round a corner, massive and late Gothic, built in the 16th century to replace an earlier cathedral destroyed during civil wars. Its tower rises over 300 feet, and its silhouette defines Segovia's skyline. Inside, the space is vast and cold, with stone vaults that amplify every sound. Even a whisper carries across the nave, making conversation feel intrusive. But we are drawn to the Alcazar, the castle at the city's western point. It sits at the confluence of two rivers, on a rocky outcrop that drops steeply on three sides. The position is naturally defensive, and castles have stood here since the time of the Moors, though the current building dates mostly to the 14th and 15th centuries. The Alcazar is said to have inspired the castle in Disney's Cinderella, and looking at it, you can see why. Its towers are topped with conical slate roofs that gleam blue in certain light. The walls are punctuated with turrets and battlements. A moat separates the main building from the town, crossed by a stone bridge that can be raised in times of danger. Inside, the rooms are smaller than you might expect from such a grand exterior. Medieval castles were built for defense, not comfort, and heating these vast stone structures was nearly impossible. The royal family used the Alcazar primarily in summer, when its height above the rivers caught cooling breezes, then retreated to warmer palaces when autumn arrived. The throne room is the castle's centerpiece, a long hall with a wooden ceiling carved to look like an upside-down ship's hull. The walls are covered with a frieze showing the faces of all Spanish monarchs, from the legendary Pelayo to Juana la Loca. Each face is painted in bright colors, though age has faded them to pastels. Some monarchs look stern, others gentle, a few frankly worried, as if they knew the burdens that awaited them. We climb the tower, over 150 steps spiraling upward in a shaft so narrow that two people cannot pass. The steps are worn into curves by centuries of feet. Near the top, you can see where medieval stonemasons carve their marks into the blocks, signatures from people whose names are otherwise lost to history. The view from the top is worth the climb. Segovia spreads below us, its cathedral rising nearby, the aqueduct visible in the distance, and beyond the city, fields and forests extending to the mountains. The air up here is clear and cold, scoured by winds that blow across the Castilian plateau with nothing to stop them. We descend carefully. The steps are steeper going down and make our way back to the train. The city is waking now. Shop shutters roll up. Children in school uniforms hurry past. The smell of fresh bread drifts from bakeries. But we are already leaving. The train carrying us west and then north, heading toward Galicia and the green, rainy corner of Spain that feels more like Ireland than Andalusia. The landscape transforms as we travel. The dry plateau gives way to hills, then mountains. Oak forests appear, then beech, then pine. Rivers run full and fast, fed by rain that falls generously in this part of Spain. The temperature drops, and through the window we can see clouds gathering, actual rain clouds, a rarity in the Spain we have been traveling through. We are approaching Santiago de Compostela, the end point of the Camino, the medieval pilgrimage route that has drawn travelers for over 1,000 years. The city sits in a valley, surrounded by green hills that are often shrouded in mist. As we approach, a light rain begins to fall, turning the world outside soft and grey. The station is modest, built to serve a city of less than 100,000 people. We step onto the platform and immediately feel the difference in climate. The air is cool and damp, carrying the smell of wet earth and vegetation. This is Atlantic weather, influenced by ocean currents rather than continental air masses. We walk through streets that are narrower and older than anything we have seen so far. Santiago's old quarter is medieval to its core, barely changed since pilgrims first began arriving in the 9th century. The buildings are stone, dark with age and damp. Moss grows in the cracks. Every doorway seems to lead to a courtyard or a church or a covered passageway. The rain continues, light all but steady. Water runs in the gutters, making its way downhill toward the river. We pull our coats closer, and keep walking. The locals pay no attention to the rain. This is simply weather, as normal as sunshine in Seville. They walk without umbrellas, indifferent to the moisture. We arrive at the Plaza del Obradoiro, the great square that fronts the cathedral. Even in rain, even in grey light, the cathedral is magnificent. Its Baroque facade rises in tiers of carved stone, covered with statues of saints and angels. At the top, St. James himself stands, his pilgrim staff in hand, welcoming travellers who have crossed Spain on foot to reach this place. For centuries, pilgrims walked for months to arrive here. They carried staffs, wore scallop shells as identification, and slept in monasteries along the route. Many came seeking spiritual fulfillment. Others came seeking penance for sins. A few came fleeing the law, which could not touch them while they travelled as pilgrims. Whatever their reasons, they all ended here, at this plaza, exhausted and relieved and transformed by the journey. We enter the cathedral through the portico of glory, a masterpiece of Romanesque sculpture. The tympanum above the door shows Christ in majesty, surrounded by the 24 elders of the Apocalypse, each one holding a musical instrument. Below, the prophets and apostles stand in rows, their stone robes flowing as if stirred by wind. The central column features a carving of the tree of Jesse, showing Christ's genealogy in intricate detail. Over centuries, pilgrims have placed their hands on this column as they entered, wearing 5 finger-shaped grooves into the solid marble. It is a striking image. Stone shaped by the accumulated touch of millions of hands, each one seeking blessing or peace, or simply marking their arrival. Inside, the cathedral is vast and dark, lit by candles and a few electric lights that fail to penetrate the shadows. The air smells of incense and old stone. Somewhere, a choir is practicing, their voices echoing through the space, blending into a sound that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere. We make our way to the main altar, where St. James's relics are supposedly kept in a silver casket beneath the high altar. Whether the bones are actually those of the apostle is a matter of faith rather than fact. No definitive proof exists either way. But for believers, the question does not matter. What matters is that this place has been sacred for over 1,000 years, that prayers said here carry the weight of all those who prayed before. The Botafumero hangs near the altar, a massive silver incense burner that can be swung on ropes by a team of 8 men. During major festivals, it flies through the cathedral in a huge arc, reaching speeds of 40 miles per hour, trailing smoke and scent. The tradition started in the Middle Ages, when the unwashed pilgrims filling the cathedral made the air nearly unbearable. The incense was practical before it became ceremonial. We sit in a pew near the back, listening to the choir, watching candlelight flicker on stone walls. Time passes without measure. The rain outside continues, audible as a soft whisper against the stained glass windows. This is a place built for contemplation, for stillness, for rest after long journeys. Eventually we rise and make our way back outside. The rain has stopped, though the cobblestones are still wet and the air remains heavy with moisture. The plaza is filling with people now. Tour groups, individual pilgrims, locals going about their business. But we are already moving away, drawn back to the train, to the next leg of our journey. The rails carry us east toward the Basque Country and Bilbao, a city that reinvented itself in the late 20th century, transforming from an industrial port to a center of art and culture. The transformation was symbolized by a single building, the Guggenheim Museum, designed by Frank Gehry, a structure so unusual that it has been called both a masterpiece and a monstrosity, sometimes by the same people. The journey takes several hours. Outside, the landscape is green and hilly, cut by rivers that run fast and clear. We pass through small towns with Basque names, strings of X's and Z's and K's that look impossible to pronounce. The architecture here is different too, with half-timbered houses and steeply pitched roofs designed to shed the heavy rains that fall in this region. We arrive in Bilbao as afternoon is turning toward evening. The city sits in a river valley, surrounded by green mountains. The Nervion River flows through its center, and along the riverbank, walking paths and parks have replaced the factories and warehouses that once defined this waterfront. The Guggenheim appears as we round a bend, a building that seems to have crash-landed from another dimension. Its walls are covered in titanium panels that ripple and shimmer, reflecting the sky and water in constantly changing patterns. The form is impossible to describe. Curves and angles that defy geometry, spaces that flow into each other in ways that shouldn't work but somehow do. Inside, the building is equally unconventional. A vast atrium rises several stories, flooded with light from skylights far above. Galleries branch off in unexpected directions, their shapes determined by the art they contain rather than any conventional floor plan. Walking through the museum is disorienting in the best way. You are never quite sure where you are or where you are going, and that uncertainty becomes part of the experience. The collection focuses on contemporary art, pieces that challenge and provoke rather than comfort. A room might contain a single large canvas, its surface covered in subtle variations of a single color. Another room features a video installation that loops endlessly, showing mundane actions. Someone walking, someone eating, elevated to meditative repetition through the simple act of sustained attention. Outside, a sculpture by Jeff Koons stands near the entrance. A massive puppy made of flowering plants, 43 feet tall, perpetually in bloom through a sophisticated irrigation system hidden in its structure. It is whimsical and absurd, and somehow perfect for a building that refuses to take itself too seriously, despite its architectural ambition. We leave the museum as the sun begins to set, turning the titanium panels gold and pink. The riverfront fills with evening strollers. Couples, families, joggers completing their daily runs. Across the water, the old town rises on a hillside, its buildings traditional and solid, a reminder of what Bilbao was before the Guggenheim changed everything. The train waits. This is our last stop before we begin the journey back, retracing our route through the Spanish night, returning to where we began. We board as the first stars appear in the darkening sky, finding our compartment, settling into seats that have become familiar over the course of this long night. The train begins to move, carrying us south. Outside, the landscape fades into darkness. Occasionally, lights from a town flash past, or the reflection of the moon appears in a river, but mostly we see only our own reflection in the window and the steady rhythm of miles passing beneath steel wheels. We have traveled through history tonight, from Roman aqueducts to contemporary museums, from Moorish palaces to medieval castles. We have seen Spain's many faces, its Arabic past and Christian present, its harsh interior and green coast, its reverence for tradition and embrace of innovation. But more than sights, we have absorbed rhythms. the patient flow of water through ancient channels, the slow accumulation of prayer in sacred spaces, the measured pace of a culture that still honors the siesta, that still eats dinner at 10, that still understands that some things should not be rushed. As the train carries us through the night, these rhythms blend and merge. The wheel beats, the water flowing, the slow passage of stars overhead. Your breathing slows to match. Your thoughts drift and settle like dust. The border between waking and sleeping grows thin. We have traveled far tonight, not in distance so much as in time. Walking through centuries, touching stones that have stood for millennia, standing in spaces that hold the prayers and dreams of countless others who passed through before us. And now, as the train rocks gently and the night deepens, it is time to rest. Spain will still be there tomorrow, its stones and streets and rivers continuing their patient existence. But for now, let the journey fade. Let the wheel's rhythm become a lullaby. Let sleep arrive as gently as rain on ancient cobblestones. The train moves through darkness, carrying us back toward the south. Outside the window, the Spanish night unfolds in shades of black and deep blue. We pass through sleeping towns where street lamps cast golden pools of light on empty plazas, where cats prowl between parked cars, where the occasional window glows warm behind closed shutters. The rhythm of the wheels has become a meditation, steady and patient, marking time without urgency. Inside our compartment, a single lamp illuminates wooden panels worn smooth by decades of travelers. The air smells faintly of old leather and the metal tang of rails. We settle deeper into our seats, letting the motion rock us gently as Spain scrolls past in the darkness. We are traveling through La Rioja now, the wine region that stretches along the Ebro River Valley. Even in darkness, you can sense the presence of the vineyards, row after row of vines climbing the hillsides, their twisted trunks planted generations ago, their roots reaching deep into soil that determines the character of the wine they produce. The relationship between soil and wine here is taken seriously, studied with the attention other cultures give to sacred texts. A vineyard on the valley floor produces wine that tastes different from one planted 50 feet uphill. The southern exposure catches more sun and creates fuller flavors. The northern slope stays cooler and produces lighter, more delicate wines. Clay soil versus limestone creates differences that experts can identify blind. These distinctions matter in Rioja. Wine has been produced here since Roman times, stored in clay amphorae and shipped across the empire. The Romans chose this valley for its climate, hot summers, mild winters, and that crucial ingredient, the Ebro River, providing water when rainfall fails. 2,000 years later, the conditions that made Roman winemakers choose this place still hold true. The train slows as we approach a small town, though we do not stop. Through the window, you can see a bodega, a wine cellar, its entrance marked by an old wooden sign barely visible in the glow from a single lamp. Inside that building, in caves carved into the hillside, barrels of wine are aging in darkness. The temperature stays constant year-round, the humidity perfect, the silence complete, except for the occasional drip of moisture from the stone ceiling. The barrels themselves are works of craft. Coopers in this region still make them by hand, shaping oak staves with tools their grandfathers used, fitting the pieces together so precisely that no glue or sealant is needed. The oak comes from specific forests in France or America, each type imparting different flavors. vanilla from American oak, spice from French. A cooper can spend 2 weeks on a single barrel, knowing it will be used for 50 years. We continue through the valley, passing more vineyards, more bodegas, more small towns built from the same honey-colored stone. The landscape here is gentle, rolling rather than dramatic, shaped by the river over millennia. In daylight, the hills are striped with the green of vines, the gold of wheat fields, and the silver of olive groves. In darkness, all of that is reduced to suggestion, shapes and shadows, the land resting until dawn brings color back. The Ebro itself is ancient, one of the longest rivers in Spain, flowing from mountains in the north down to the Mediterranean. Its name comes from the Iberians, the people who lived here before the Romans arrived, before written history began recording such things. They built villages along its banks, fished its waters, and watched the seasonal floods that renewed the soil year after year. Those floods are controlled now, managed by dams and irrigation systems. But the river still holds its essential character, patient, persistent, moving steadily toward the sea, regardless of what humans build around it. In summer, when rain disappears for months, the Ebro shrinks but never stops flowing. In winter, when storms arrive from the Atlantic, it swells and rushes, carrying soil and debris, and occasionally reminding people that it was here first. We cross a bridge. Old iron girders painted dark green, built in the late 19th century when railways were transforming Spain. Below, the river reflects starlight, its surface smooth and dark. A heron stands in the shallows, motionless, waiting for fish that move in the current. The bird will stand like that for hours if necessary, patient beyond measure, understanding that food comes to those who wait. The train climbs away from the river valley, heading into the Sierra de la Demanda, low mountains that separate Rioja from Castile. The vegetation changes as we gain altitude. Vines give way to oak forests, then to pine. The air grows cooler. Through the window, you can see your breath when you lean close to the glass. We pass through a tunnel cut through solid rock, our lights reflecting off wet stone walls, the sound of the wheels amplified into a roar that fills the compartment. Then we emerge on the other side, and the world is quiet again, just the steady rhythm of forward motion and the vast Spanish night. A village appears on a hilltop to our left, its church tower silhouetted against stars. This is quintessential rural Spain, a cluster of houses around a plaza, a church that dominates the skyline, fields stretching away in all directions. The population of such villages has been declining for decades as young people move to cities for work, but those who remain maintain traditions that reach back centuries. In that village, in a house we cannot see, an old woman might be awake despite the late hour, unable to sleep as easily as she once did. She sits by a window, looking out at the night, at the train passing below. She has lived in that house for 80 years, raised children there, buried a husband, watched grandchildren grow and move away. The walls around her hold a lifetime of memory. Celebrations and grief, ordinary days that accumulate into a life. The train continues, carrying us away from her window, from her village, from that moment of connection we will never know about. We are moving through countless lives tonight, past sleeping houses where dreams unfold behind closed shutters, past fields where animals rest, past all the private, invisible experiences that make up the vast majority of existence. We are descending now, dropping back toward the plateau, toward the open country where Castile spreads flat and wide. This is where Don Quixote rode, tilting at windmills and imagining giants. Cervantes set his story here because the landscape matched his hero's delusions. Empty enough that a man could see whatever he wanted in the distance, monotonous enough that fantasy became necessary to endure the journey. The windmills Don Quixote fought are still here, scattered across the region, though most no longer turn. They stand on hilltops, white-walled and still, their sails removed or locked in place. A few have been restored and opened as museums, but most simply exist, weathering slowly, reminders of a time when grain was ground by wind power and every village needed a miller. The design is simple, a cylindrical tower with a conical roof that can rotate to catch the wind from any direction. Inside, wooden gears transfer the motion of the sails to a grinding stone. The miller lived in the base of the tower, waking when the wind rose, sleeping when it died. His hands were always dusted with flour, his clothes perpetually white, his sense of time tied to weather rather than clocks. Being a miller was a respected position, one of the few skilled trades in a rural economy dominated by farming. The miller knew everyone's business because everyone came to him with grain. He knew who had a good harvest and who struggled. He knew which families were prospering and which were falling into debt. In a way, he was the village's memory keeper, tracking the ebb and flow of fortune through the quantity of wheat that passed through his door. The train brings us to Consuegra, a town famous for its windmills. A dozen of them stand on a ridge above the town, lined up like soldiers, their white walls glowing faintly in starlight. We step off the train into air that is cool and completely still. No wind tonight, no reason for sails to turn even if they could. We walk through empty streets toward the ridge. The town is asleep, its residents long since gone to bed. Our footsteps echo off stone walls. A dog barks somewhere, then falls silent. Above us, the windmills wait, patient monuments to obsolete technology. The climb to the ridge is steady, but not steep. The path is dirt, worn smooth by tourists who come during daylight to photograph the windmills against blue sky. At night, without visitors, the place feels different, more solemn, less picturesque. The windmills are not attractions here. They are simply themselves. Structures built for purpose, now purposeless, but enduring. We reach the first windmill and find the door unlocked. Inside, the air smells of old wood and dust. The grinding stone sits in the center, a massive disc of granite, worn concave by centuries of grain passing beneath it. Wooden beams rise toward the roof, their surfaces dark with age. Their joints fitted so precisely that no nails were needed. Standing inside, looking up at the mechanism that once transferred wind into rotational force, you can appreciate the ingenuity involved. This is physics made visible. Leverage and torque, the multiplication of force through careful arrangement of simple machines. The miller who worked here needed to understand wind patterns, grain moisture, stone sharpening, and the temperament of the families who depended on him. It was a demanding life, but one with clear purpose. We step back outside. The ridge offers a view across miles of dark plateau. Somewhere in that darkness, more windmills stand on other ridges. Somewhere, villages sleep in the shelter of valleys. Somewhere, the descendants of Don Quixote's creator continue their lives, probably never thinking about the fictional knight who made this landscape famous. The train calls us back. We descend the ridge as the first hint of dawn touches the eastern horizon. Not sunrise yet, but the promise of it, a thinning of the darkness, a shift from black to grey. We board and settle into our compartment as the locomotive's whistle sounds, a lonely note that carries across the empty land. We are travelling east now, toward Valencia and the coast, retracing part of our earlier route, but this time approaching from a different angle. The landscape slowly changes as we travel. The dry plateau, giving way to irrigated fields. The austere beauty of the interior replaced by the lush green of the coastal plain. Orange groves begin to appear, their trees heavy with fruit, even though harvest season is past. These are the Valencia oranges that have made this region famous, sweet and juicy, perfect for eating fresh. The trees are planted in perfect rows, their branches pruned to create shapes that maximize sunlight exposure. In spring, when they bloom, the scent from these groves is so powerful, it reaches miles inland, turning the air sweet. The cultivation of oranges here began in the 10th century, when Moorish farmers brought the trees from Asia. They understood irrigation, knew how to move water efficiently across flat land, and recognized that Valencia's climate was nearly perfect for citrus. Mild winters, hot summers, and enough rain to keep the trees healthy without drowning their roots. The irrigation systems they designed are still in use, updated, but essentially unchanged. Water flows from mountain rivers into canals that divide and subdivide, feeding smaller channels that run between the rows of trees. Gates and locks control the flow, ensuring that each grove receives its share. In the old days, water rights were so valuable, they were written into wills and fought over in courts. A farmer with reliable water was wealthy. One without it struggled. We pass through a small town where a market is just beginning to set up in the plaza. Vendors arrive in trucks, unload tables and canopies, arrange produce in careful displays. This is the pattern throughout Spain. Markets that open at dawn, fill with activity for a few hours, then disappear, leaving the plaza empty again by noon. The system has worked for centuries and shows no sign of changing. The coast appears as the sun breaks the horizon. The Mediterranean spreads before us, dark blue in the early light, its surface calm and smooth. We are approaching Valencia from the south, and the city appears gradually. First the outlying developments, then the industrial port, then the historic centre, where medieval walls once defined the city's boundaries. Valencia is Spain's third largest city, though it rarely gets the attention that Madrid and Barcelona receive. This seems to suit the city fine. It goes about its business without seeking validation, producing paella and oranges and ceramics, hosting festivals that matter deeply to locals, even if outsiders have never heard of them. We arrive at Estación del Norte, a train station built in the early 20th century in the modernist style that was fashionable at the time. The exterior is covered with ceramic tiles showing oranges and orange blossoms, a reminder that this city's identity is deeply tied to the fruit that grows in groves all around it. Inside, the waiting room has a ceiling covered with mosaics, wooden benches worn smooth by generations of travelers, and a sense of unhurried time that seems increasingly rare in modern transportation hubs. We step out into a city that is waking slowly. Valencia rises late and stays up later, following a schedule that baffles visitors from Northern Europe. Breakfast happens at 9 or 10, lunch at 3, dinner at 10 or 11. Bars and restaurants stay open past midnight, even on weeknights. The Spanish concept of nighttime is different. It is not simply when you sleep, but a continuation of the day, a time for socializing and eating and enjoying the cool air after the heat finally breaks. We walk through streets that mix old and new with varying degrees of success. Medieval buildings stand next to 20th century apartment blocks. Gothic churches face modern shops. And everywhere, orange trees line the sidewalks, their branches heavy with fruit that no one picks because these are ornamental varieties, too bitter to eat. The central market, the Mercado Central, is already busy despite the early hour. This is one of the largest fresh food markets in Europe, housed in a building of iron and glass that looks like a cathedral dedicated to produce. Inside, stalls overflow with vegetables grown in the surrounding huerta, fish brought in from the Mediterranean just hours ago, and every variety of meat, cheese, and olive you could imagine. The vendors arrange their goods with artistic care. Tomatoes are stacked in pyramids. Peppers are sorted by color, red, green, yellow, and arranged in patterns. Fish lie on beds of ice, their scales catching the light, their eyes still clear. This is not just commerce. It is a daily performance, a demonstration of abundance and quality, and the vendor's pride in what they sell. We wander through the aisles, breathing in the smells. Fresh herbs, ripe fruit, the salt tang of seafood, the earthy scent of mushrooms. Vendors call out to each other in Valencian, the local language that sounds like a blend of Spanish and Catalan. Customers argue good-naturedly over prices, squeeze melons to test ripeness, and carry away their purchases in string bags that will be used until they fall apart and then repaired and used some more. Paella was invented in Valencia, in the rice fields that surround the city, cooked by farmers over wood fires during lunch breaks. The original versions contained whatever was available: rabbit, snails, beans, rice. The dish took its name from the pan it was cooked in, a wide, shallow vessel that allowed the rice to form a crust on the bottom called socarrat, considered by purists to be the best part. Today, paella has evolved into countless variations: seafood versions for tourists, vegetarian versions for modern sensibilities, elaborate versions with lobster and saffron for special occasions. But in Valencia, traditional paella is still made the old way, with rabbit and snails and butter beans, cooked over an open fire, stirred carefully to prevent burning, and eaten directly from the pan using wooden spoons. The rice itself is crucial. It must be a short-grain variety that can absorb liquid without becoming mushy. The fields where this rice grows are just outside the city, flooded for part of the year, drained for harvest. These fields are also important habitats for birds: herons, egrets, ducks, that feed in the shallow water. During migration season, the fields become temporary homes for species traveling between Europe and Africa. We leave the market as full daylight arrives, the sun climbing above the buildings, casting long shadows across plazas. The city's pace is picking up. More people on the streets, more shops opening, more sound and movement. But we are already moving toward the station, drawn back to the train, to the continuing journey south. The rails carry us along the coast, keeping the Mediterranean visible through the window. The sea is calm today, barely moving, its surface reflecting the sky. Occasionally, you can see fishing boats far from shore, their nets deployed, following schools of fish that move through these waters, following ancient migratory patterns. The coastline here has been heavily developed. Resort towns, marinas, golf courses, But between the developments, you can still find stretches that look much as they did centuries ago. Rocky cliffs, small beaches, pine trees growing right to the water's edge. These undeveloped sections are protected now, recognized as valuable, not for what can be built on them, but for what they preserve. Habitat for species that are disappearing elsewhere. Quiet spaces in an increasingly crowded coast. We turn inland, leaving the sea behind, climbing into the mountains that separate the coast from the interior. The train labors upward, its engine working harder, its speed dropping. The landscape changes quickly. Lush coastal vegetation gives way to scrubland, then to pine forest, then to bare rock. We are ascending into the Sierra de Cazorla, a mountain range that is wild enough to hold wolves and eagles, remote enough that villages here can only be reached by rough mountain roads. These mountains are the source of the Guadalquivir, the river that flows through Córdoba and Seville before reaching the Atlantic. Up here, it is just a stream, narrow enough to jump across, cold with snowmelt, flowing over rocks that have been polished smooth by centuries of water. Following this stream downward, watching it grow and gather tributaries, and eventually become a river wide enough for ships, you could trace the geographic skeleton of Andalusia. The train stops at a small station in a mountain village. We step out into air that is cold and thin. The village is tiny. A few dozen houses, a church, a bar that serves as the community's social center. The smoke rises from chimneys where wood fires burn against the morning chill. The smell is clean and sharp, pine sap burning, the smoke rising straight up in the still air. We walk through the village, past stone houses with slate roofs, past garden plots protected by fences made from branches, past a plaza where old men will gather later to play cards and argue about politics. Right now, the plaza is empty, except for a dog sleeping in a patch of sunlight, too old to bother moving when we walk past. The church is small and simple, its bell tower barely tall enough to rise above the surrounding roofs. Inside, the space is plain, whitewashed walls, wooden pews worn smooth by generations of villagers, a modest altar with a carved wooden cross. There are no stained glass windows, no elaborate decorations, just the essentials of worship reduced to their most basic forms. This simplicity is not poverty, but choice. In mountain villages like this one, ostentation is viewed with suspicion. What matters is reliability, durability, the ability to endure harsh winters and dry summers. A church that has stood for 400 years without major repairs is more impressive than one covered in gold that needs constant maintenance. We sit in a pew near the back, listening to silence. The air inside is cool and still, carrying the faint smell of incense from last Sunday's Mass. Light enters through small windows, casting rectangular patches of brightness on stone floors. Outside, a rooster crows, the sound distant and dreamlike. Time moves differently in places like this. The modern world's obsession with speed and efficiency feels distant, almost incomprehensible. Here, work follows the seasons, not the clock. Meals happen when hunger dictates, not when scheduled. Sleep comes when darkness falls, not when some device reminds you it is bedtime. It is a rhythm that humans followed for millennia before electricity and international time zones complicated everything. The train's whistle sounds, calling us back. We leave the church, walk through the quiet village, and board as the sun climbs higher. The locomotive begins to move, carrying us downward now, descending from the mountains toward Andalusia and the cities we have already visited: Granada, Córdoba, Seville. though this time we will experience them in daylight's truth rather than nighttime's mystery. The descent is gradual but constant. Outside, the landscape changes in reverse, bare rock giving way to pine forest, then scrubland, then the olive groves that define Andalusia's agricultural identity. These trees are economically vital, providing income for thousands of families, but they also shape the landscape's aesthetics. The silver green of their leaves against red soil, the twisted forms of ancient trunks, the pattern of shadows they cast in morning light. Olive cultivation in Spain dates back to Roman times, though the trees themselves may be even older than that. Some groves contain trees that are believed to be over 1,000 years old, their trunks thick and hollow, their branches still producing fruit. These ancient trees are treasured, sometimes protected by law, recognized as living links to the past. The harvest happens in winter, when the olives have ripened from green to dark purple. Workers spread nets beneath the trees and use long poles to knock the fruit down. It is physical labor, demanding and repetitive, but it provides employment when other agricultural work is scarce. The olives are collected, transported to mills, and pressed within 24 hours. Speed is essential because olives begin to oxidize quickly, and oxidation ruins the flavor. The resulting oil varies enormously depending on the variety of olive, the soil, the climate, and the timing of harvest. Early harvest produces oil that is green and peppery, full-flavored, assertive. Late harvest produces oil that is golden and mild, buttery, gentle. Andalusian oil makers debate these distinctions with the passion other cultures reserve for wine, and the best oils command prices that reflect their quality. We are approaching Jaén, the capital of olive oil production in Spain. The city sits on a hill, dominated by a massive castle that has watched over the region for centuries. Olive groves surround it in every direction, stretching to the horizon. The trees planted in rows so straight, they create optical illusions when viewed from certain angles. The train stops, and we step onto a platform warmed by morning sun. Jaén is not on most tourist itineraries, overshadowed by Granada's Alhambra and Cordoba's mosque. But locals are fine with that. They have their city to themselves, along with their cathedral, their castle, their olive oil, and a sense that Jaén's identity does not require outside validation. We walk uphill through streets that are beginning to fill with morning activity. Shops open, children walk to school in groups, and the smell of fresh bread drifts from bakeries. The cathedral appears as we round a corner, a Renaissance building with a facade that is equal parts elegant and imposing. Inside, the space is vast and bright, lit by windows that fill the nave with natural light. The cathedral contains a relic that draws pilgrims from across Spain, the Santo Rostro, a cloth that is said to bear the image of Christ's face. Whether it is authentic is, like so many religious relics, a matter of faith rather than evidence. What is undeniable is the devotion it inspires, the centuries of prayers offered in its presence, the comfort it has provided to believers who see in it proof of the divine. We do not linger long. The castle calls us. The Castillo de Santa Catalina, perched on a rocky outcrop high above the city. The climb is steep, the path switching back and forth up the hillside. By the time we reach the entrance, we are breathing hard, grateful for the cool morning air and the shade provided by the castle's walls. The castle is massive, built in the 13th century after the Christian reconquest of Jaén. It was designed to be impregnable, with walls 20 feet thick, towers placed to cover every approach, and a position on the hilltop that gave defenders an unobstructed view of any army attempting to approach. The castle was never successfully besieged, though many tried. Inside, most of the structure is ruined. Walls stand without roofs, stairs lead to nowhere, rooms open to the sky, but the bones of the place remain impressive. You can see how the defenders lived, where they slept, where they stored food and weapons, where they drew water from cisterns fed by rain. It was a self-contained world, capable of withstanding months of siege if supplied correctly. The view from the highest tower is extraordinary. Below, High spreads across its valley, the cathedral visible, the modern city extending beyond the old town's boundaries. Beyond the city, olive groves create a pattern that looks almost abstract. Geometric shapes in shades of green and silver, extending until atmosphere turns them blue. We could stay longer, but the train waits, and our journey is not quite finished. We descend the hill, return through the waking city, and board as church bells mark mid-morning. The locomotive's whistle sounds, and we are moving again, heading west towards Seville for our final visit. The journey takes us through landscape we have seen before, but familiarity does not breed contempt. Instead, it allows us to notice details we missed the first time. A farmhouse that was invisible in darkness now appears, its walls bright white, its courtyard shaded by a fig tree. A bridge we crossed without thought reveals itself as Roman in construction, its arches perfect half circles, its stones fitted with precision that modern builders struggle to match. Seville appears in late morning, the sun already high, the temperature rising toward the heat that will dominate the afternoon. We step off the train into air that smells of orange blossoms and warm stone, a combination that is quintessentially Sevillano, as distinctive as a fingerprint. The city is busy now, fully awake, moving at the pace that characterizes Andalusian urban life. Not rushed, but purposeful, acknowledging that things need doing, while also recognizing that most things can wait. We walk through streets we traveled in darkness, now revealed in sunlight. The buildings painted in warm yellows and creams, the balconies overflowing with geraniums, the narrow lanes creating channels of shadow that offer relief from the climbing heat. We find ourselves in Triana, the neighborhood across the river from the city center. This was traditionally the Gypsy Quarter, home to families who brought flamenco from the Romani traditions of northern India, adapting it over centuries into something uniquely Spanish. Today, Triana is gentrifying, but traces of its history remain. Shops selling flamenco shoes and guitars, tablaos where performances happen nightly, and families who can trace their residence here back generations. Flamenco is often misunderstood by outsiders who see it as entertainment, as folklore, as something quaint. But for those who understand it, flamenco is a language, a way of expressing emotions that words cannot capture. The guitar provides a foundation, complex rhythms that the player maintains while improvising melodic lines. The dancer responds to the music, feet striking the floor in patterns that are both mathematical and emotional. The singer wails, voice breaking with duende, that quality of authentic emotion that cannot be faked. Learning flamenco takes years, often beginning in childhood. The rhythms are complicated, built in multiples of 3 and 4 simultaneously, creating polyrhythmic patterns that seem impossible until suddenly they make perfect sense. The footwork requires strength and precision, each strike placed exactly, the sound mattering as much as the movement. The singing demands understanding of decades of tradition, knowledge of the standard songs, and the confidence to improvise within those structures. We stop at a small plaza where an old man sits on a bench, a guitar across his lap. His hands move across the strings, playing quietly, not performing, but simply playing for himself. Though music is beautiful, melancholy, and complex, full of emotion held barely in check. He plays for perhaps 10 minutes, then stops, looks up, notices us watching, and nods slightly before standing and walking away, the guitar held carefully under his arm. The moment passes, impossible to recapture, existing now only in memory. This is the nature of flamenco, of all live performance. It happens once, and then it is gone, leaving behind only the echo of sound and the impression it made on those present. Recordings capture the notes, but miss the essence, the exchange between performer and audience that makes the music come alive. We cross the river on the Triana Bridge, its ironwork painted in green and gold, its pedestrian walkway separated from car traffic by sturdy railings. Below, the Guadalquivir flows steadily, carrying water and sediment from mountains far inland down to the Atlantic. The river is narrower here than it once was, constricted by embankments built to prevent floods, but it remains the city's defining feature, the reason Seville exists at all. On the other side, we enter the old Jewish quarter once more, its streets just as narrow as they were in darkness, though now we can see the details we missed. The tile work around doorways, the iron grills over ground floor windows, the potted plants that line in every balcony. We walk without destination, letting the streets guide us, trusting that in a city this old, every path leads somewhere worth seeing. We emerge at the Plaza de España, a massive semicircular building that was constructed for the Ibero-American Exposition of 1929. The structure wraps around a plaza with a fountain and canal, its facade decorated with ceramic tiles showing scenes from Spanish history. Bridges cross the canal, each one representing a different Spanish province. And alcoves along the building contain tile murals depicting each region's character. The scale is grand, almost overwhelming, but the details invite close examination. The tiles are hand-painted, each one unique, their colors still bright after nearly a century. The bridges are decorated with ceramic railings in patterns that echo Moorish designs. The building's towers rise at each end, visible for miles, marking the plaza's location like architectural exclamation points. We sit on a bench in the shade, watching visitors explore the plaza. A group of schoolchildren runs past, their voices bright with excitement. A couple poses for photographs on one of the bridges. An old woman feeds pigeons, scattering breadcrumbs while the birds swirl around her feet. Life continues, ordinary and extraordinary. The grand architecture, providing a backdrop for small human moments. The sun is high now, approaching noon, and the heat is building. This is siesta time, when sensible people retreat indoors, close shutters against the sun, and rest until the worst of the heat passes. We take the hint, returning to the train station, finding our compartment, settling in as the locomotive prepares for the final leg of our journey. We are heading back to Barcelona, retracing our path along the Mediterranean coast. The train moves through the afternoon heat, passing fields where nothing moves, towns where metal shutters are pulled down over shop windows, landscapes that seem to shimmer in the brutal sunlight. Inside our compartment, the air is cooler, filtered through vents that pull from the shaded side of the train. We drowse as we travel, the motion rocking us gently, the heat outside making sleep feel natural and necessary. Time becomes elastic. Minutes stretch, hours compress. And when we wake, the landscape outside has changed from the flatlands of Andalusia to the coastal mountains of Murcia. The vegetation is sparse here, adapted to survive on minimal rainfall. Palms grow in wadis where underground water reaches the surface. Cacti and succulents cling to rocky slopes. In spring, after rare rains, the hillsides explode with wildflowers that bloom, seed, and die in a matter of weeks. Their entire life cycle compressed into the brief window when water is available. This is Spain's driest region, receiving less than 10 inches of rain per year in some areas. Yet people have lived here for millennia, adapting their agriculture to the conditions, building cisterns to catch and store water, developing crops that can survive with minimal irrigation. Almonds grow well here, their trees dormant through the summer heat, producing nuts that are harvested in autumn. Dates thrive in the oases, hanging in heavy clusters from palm trees that can live for over a century. The train follows the coast now, the Mediterranean visible through the window, its surface glittering in afternoon light. We pass resort towns that are crowded with summer tourists, though the train does not stop at them. These places exist for a few months of intense activity, then settle into quiet for the remainder of the year. Their permanent populations small, their economies entirely dependent on the brief tourist season. We arrive in Barcelona as evening approaches, the sun dropping toward the western horizon, the light turning golden and warm. The city appears different than it did when we first arrived. More familiar, perhaps, but also more complex. Its layers of history and culture, more visible now that we have traveled through the rest of Spain and understand the connections. We step off the train at Estacio de França, the same station where we began our journey. The great iron and glass ceiling arches overhead, its surface catching the evening light. The marble floors reflect footsteps and voices, creating a gentle echo that fills the vast space. We walk slowly, not ready to leave quite yet, letting the journey settle into memory. Outside, Barcelona moves at its evening pace. Restaurants opening for dinner that will not truly begin until 9 or 10. Families taking the paseo through public parks. Children playing in plazas while their parents watch from benches. The city is vibrant, but not frantic. Alive, but not overwhelming. Exactly itself and comfortable with that identity. We walk one final time through the Gothic quarter, past buildings that have stood for centuries, through lanes so narrow that midday sun never reaches their stones. We pass the cathedral, its facade illuminated by spotlights that make the Gothic details seem to move and breathe. We cross plazas where musicians play and artists sketch portraits, and the eternal rhythms of urban life continue uninterrupted. The Sagrada Familia appears one last time, its towers lit from below, the stained glass windows glowing from interior lights. Construction cranes stand beside it, silent now as night falls, waiting for morning when work will resume on this building that has been under construction for over a century and may not be finished for another generation. But that is acceptable. Some things should not be rushed. Some works require time to reach their full expression. Gaudí understood this, accepting that his vision would outlive him, trusting that future builders would honor his intentions while adapting to changing technologies and materials. We stand for a while, looking up at the towers reaching into the darkening sky, listening to the sounds of the city around us. Conversations in Catalan and Spanish, children laughing, distant music, the general hum of urban existence. Then we turn away, walking back toward the station, back toward the train that will carry us out of this city and into memory. The final train ride is short, just a loop back to where we truly began, though that place exists more in imagination than geography. We board, settle into our familiar compartment, and feel the locomotive begin to move. The wheels find their rhythm, that steady heartbeat that has carried us across Spain and back again. Outside, darkness falls completely. The city lights fade behind us. Stars appear overhead, constant and distant. The same stars that have watched over Spain since before humans walked here, since before the Moors arrived, before the Romans, before any of the civilizations that have risen and fallen on this peninsula. We have traveled through history tonight, touched stones that were ancient when Columbus sailed, walked paths that pilgrims have followed for 1,000 years, stood in spaces that hold centuries of prayer and music and silence. We have seen Spain's many faces, Moorish and Christian, ancient and modern, austere and exuberant, quiet and full of song. But more than sight, we have absorbed rhythms, the patient flow of water through centuries-old channels, the slow accumulation of prayer in sacred spaces, the measured pace of a culture that still honors the siesta, that still eats dinner late, that still understands that some things should not be rushed. As the train rocks gently and the night deepens, these rhythms blend and merge. The wheel beats, the heart beats, the breath slows and deepens. The border between waking and sleeping grows thin, and crossing it becomes not a sudden drop but a gentle drift, like a boat slipping away from shore into calm water. We have traveled far tonight, not just in distance, but in time, not just through space, but through layers of history and culture and human experience. We have walked with ghosts and stood in spaces that hold centuries of memory. We have touched permanence and felt the weight of deep time. And now, as the train carries us into the Spanish night, as the rhythms we have absorbed become the rhythms of rest, it is time to let the journey fade into sleep. The wheels know their path. The rails stretch on through darkness. The night enfolds everything in quiet embrace. Spain will still be there tomorrow, its stones and streets and rivers continuing their patient existence. The Alhambra's fountains will still flow. The Sagrada Familia will still reach toward heaven. The pilgrims will still walk toward Santiago, one step at a time, following paths worn smooth by millions of feet. But for now, let it all recede. Let the details blur and soften. Let the train's gentle motion rock you deeper into rest. Let sleep arrive like nightfall in Andalusia, gradual and natural and complete. Rest now. The journey is done. The night is deep. The wheels turn on through darkness, carrying you home. Sleep well, traveller. Let the Spanish night embrace you with its warmth and quiet. But before the final rest, let us drift through a few more gentle moments, a few more whispered secrets of this land that has shared so much with us tonight. The train moves through darkness one last time, carrying us past the vineyards of Penedès, where cava is made in the same method as champagne, secondary fermentation in the bottle, months or years of aging in underground cellars, bottles turned by hand a quarter turn each day until the sediment collects at the cork. The cellars here extend deep into the earth, cool and dark and perfectly humid, where millions of bottles rest on racks, waiting for their moment. The people who make kava are patient beyond measure. They plant vines knowing they will not produce quality grapes for 5 years. They bottle wine knowing it will not be ready to sell for 3 more years. They invest time and labor and hope into a product that exists almost entirely in the future, trusting that quality will be rewarded, that patience will be justified. We pass through Zaragoza in the deepest part of night, the city sleeping beneath stars. The Basilica del Pilar rises beside the Ebro River, its towers visible even in darkness, its presence defining the city's silhouette. Legend says this was where the Virgin Mary appeared to St. James in the year 40, standing atop a pillar of jasper, encouraging him to continue his missionary work in Spain. Whether the legend is true matters less than what it has inspired. Centuries of pilgrimage, countless prayers offered, art and architecture created to honor that moment. The basilica holds frescoes by Goya, domes that seem to float impossibly above the nave, and a small chapel where the faithful line up to kiss the pillar through a gap in its silver covering. The train continues east, climbing into the Pyrenees one final time, following valleys carved by glaciers that retreated 10,000 years ago. The mountains here are sharp and dramatic, nothing like the gentle hills of Andalusia. Snow lingers on the peaks even in summer, feeding streams that rush downward with wild energy. We pass through a tunnel, the sound of the wheels amplifying into thunder, then emerge to find ourselves in a different world. The air thinner, the temperature cooler, the stars brighter in the absence of light pollution. A shepherd's hut appears on a distant hillside, a single light burning in its window. Someone awake in the vastness of the night. Who lives in that hut? Perhaps an old shepherd, tending flocks that graze the high meadows in summer and descend to valleys in winter. Perhaps he is alone by choice, content with the company of sheep and sheepdogs, finding in solitude something that crowded cities cannot offer. Or perhaps he is there because that is what his father did and his grandfather, following a profession that stretches back to the Bronze Age. The shepherds of the Pyrenees are a vanishing breed, their traditional lifestyle no longer economically viable for most young people. But a few remain, keeping the old ways alive, moving with the seasons, reading weather in clouds and wind, knowing their animals as individuals rather than as numbers in a flock. The train begins to descend, dropping back toward the coast, toward Barcelona and the Mediterranean. We pass through Girona, a city known for its preserved Jewish quarter, its Roman walls, and its cathedral with the widest Gothic nave in the world. The Onya River flows through the city's center, and along its banks, houses painted in shades of red and orange and yellow create a reflection in the water that photographers travel miles to capture. In darkness, we cannot see these colors, but we can sense the city's presence, or its walls watching, its cathedral tower rising above medieval roofs, its streets winding through neighborhoods that have existed since before the Moors arrived. Girona has been fought over by Romans, Visigoths, Moors, and Franks. It has been besieged 25 times throughout its history, yet it endures, its walls repaired, its gates rebuilt, its identity intact. The countryside between Girona and Barcelona is wine country once more, though different from Rioja. Here, the vines grow on hillsides overlooking the sea, influenced by Mediterranean breezes that moderate temperature and bring morning fog. The wines are different too, lighter, crisper, with a mineral quality that comes from the rocky soil. We pass a monastery that appears as a dark shape against darker hills. This is Montserrat, the mountain monastery, where a choir of boy sopranos sings daily, their voices filling the basilica with sound so pure it seems otherworldly. The monastery was founded in the 11th century, built into the mountainside, accessible only by a steep, winding road that tests drivers' nerves. Pilgrims come to Montserrat to see La Moreneta, the Black Madonna, a wooden statue darkened by centuries of candle smoke. They climb stairs on their knees, pray in the basilica, and hike the mountain trails that lead to hermitages and viewpoints. From the summit, on clear days, you can see Barcelona, the Pyrenees, and the Mediterranean. Half of Catalonia spread below like a map. The train brings us back to Barcelona for the final time, pulling into the station as the first birds begin their dawn songs. The city is still mostly asleep, but the earliest risers are already moving. Bakers arriving at their shops, cleaning crews, washing streets, delivery trucks, unloading supplies. We step onto the platform, our legs slightly unsteady after so many hours on the train. The journey is ending, though the memories will remain. The taste of olives and oranges, the smell of orange blossoms and incense, the sound of water flowing through ancient channels and flamenco guitar echoing in narrow streets. Spain has shared its secrets with us, the hidden mechanics of water engineering, the patience required for wine and olive oil, the layers of history visible in every city's stones. It has shown us beauty in grand cathedrals and tiny patios, in mountain peaks and coastal plains, in art museums and market stalls. But more than facts and sights, Spain has taught us rhythms. The slow accumulation of craft perfected over generations, the seasonal migrations of shepherds and their flocks, the daily pattern of market and siesta and evening paseo. These rhythms are counter to modernity's demand for speed and efficiency, and perhaps that is why they feel so necessary, so restorative. As we leave the station and step into Barcelona's waking streets, as the journey transitions from experience to memory, we carry these rhythms with us. They will surface at odd moments, when we notice morning light on stone, when we hear water running, when we smell something that reminds us of those orange groves stretching to the horizon. For now, though, it is time to rest. The journey has been long, traveling not just through space, but through time, not just across geography, but through layers of human experience and history. We have walked with Romans and Moors, with medieval pilgrims and Renaissance artists, with shepherds and winemakers, and all those who have called this peninsula home. The Spanish night is ending, giving way to dawn. The cities we visited are waking, beginning another day in their long existence. The rivers continue flowing. The mountains stand patient. The olive trees prepare for another season of growth and harvest. But we are done traveling. We have seen enough, absorbed enough. Let the land and its stories wash over us in gentle waves. Now comes the time for integration, for the experiences to settle and transform from immediate sensation into lasting memory. We walk once more through Barcelona's Gothic quarter, through streets that are slowly filling with morning light. A cafe is opening, its owner arranging tables on the sidewalk, setting out sugar bowls and napkin holders with practiced efficiency. The smell of coffee drifts out, rich and bitter, mixed with the sweetness of pastries warming in the oven. This is the ritual that repeats every morning in every Spanish city. The slow transition from night to day, the gradual awakening of commerce and conversation. It is unhurried, this morning routine, acknowledging that rushing adds nothing of value, that quality takes time. We pass a small church we missed on previous walks, its door standing open despite the early hour. Inside, candles flicker before a side altar where a woman kneels in prayer. She is elderly, dressed in black, her hands folded, her lips moving silently. How many mornings has she come here? How many prayers has she offered in this exact spot? The stone beneath her knees is worn into a shallow depression, shaped by decades of devotion. Devotion, that is perhaps Spain's defining characteristic. Not just religious devotion, though that runs deep, but devotion to craft, to tradition, to the patient perfection of technique. The guitar maker who spends weeks selecting wood, months shaping and sanding, years learning to hear what makes one instrument sing while another merely sounds. The ceramic artist who mixes glazes according to recipes that are family secrets, firing pieces in kilns that must reach exact temperatures at precise moments. The chef who makes paella the way her grandmother taught her, refusing shortcuts even when they would be easier and more profitable. This devotion is visible everywhere, once you know to look for it. In the perfect fit of stones in a Roman bridge, in the carved details on a Gothic capital 50 feet above the ground, where no one can see them closely. In the way a bar owner polishes glasses until they shine, even though new customers will be using them within minutes. It is the opposite of disposable culture, of planned obsolescence, of good enough. It is the insistence that things done well honor both the maker and the user. That quality is its own justification, that work worth doing is worth doing supremely well. The train has brought us full circle now, back to where we began, though we are not the same as when we started. Travel changes us, even imaginary travel, even journeys taken from the safety of our beds. We carry Spain with us now, its light and shadow, its sounds and silences, its fierce devotion to beauty and craft and tradition. The Mediterranean appears one final time, visible between buildings, its surface catching the rising sun and turning gold. Fishing boats are returning to harbour, their holds full or empty, depending on luck and skill, and the mysterious movements of fish. Fishermen have worked these waters since before recorded history, learning the sea's moods, reading its surface, knowing where schools gather and currents run. Their knowledge is empirical, accumulated over lifetimes, passed from father to son through demonstration rather than explanation. Where to set nets, when to stay in harbour, how to read weather in the colour of the dawn sky. This knowledge is not written in books. It lives in the bodies and minds of people who spend their lives on the water. We watch the boats come in, watch the fishermen unload their catch into plastic bins, watch buyers examine the fish with professional eyes that can spot quality instantly. This is another morning ritual, repeated in fishing villages all along the coast, a continuation of practices that are essentially unchanged since antiquity. The auction will happen soon, buyers bidding on lots, prices fluctuating based on supply and demand, the best fish going to the best restaurants, where chefs will prepare them simply, honouring the ingredient rather than overwhelming it. By tonight, these fish will be served on white plates in candlelit dining rooms. their journey from sea to table, complete in less than 24 hours. We turn inland, walking through La Barceloneta, the neighborhood built on land reclaimed from the sea. The streets here are perfectly straight, planned in the 18th century by military engineers who valued order and efficiency. This contrasts sharply with the Gothic quarter's medieval tangle, demonstrating in urban form the shift from organic growth to rational planning. But even straight streets develop character over time. Laundry hangs between balconies. Graffiti decorates walls. Corner bars develop regular customers who come at the same time daily. Order imposed from above yields eventually to the chaos of actual human life, which refuses to be perfectly organized. We arrive at a park where old men are gathering to play petanca, a game similar to bocce. They arrive with their metal balls in cloth bags, mark out boundaries in the dirt, and begin. The game is quiet, focused, interrupted only by occasional commentary in Catalan. They have been playing together for years, possibly decades, the game an excuse for companionship, as much as competition. Watching them, you realize this is what aging should look like: remaining engaged, maintaining friendships, having routines that give structure to days. These men are not warehoused in facilities or isolated in apartments. They are part of their community, known by shopkeepers and neighbors, still participating in the life of the city. Spain treats its elderly differently than much of the modern world. Multi-generational households are still common. Retirement means joining the daily rhythm of the neighborhood rather than withdrawing from it. The cafe, the market, the plaza bench. These become stages for the final act of life, which can last for decades if health permits. The sun is higher now, the temperature rising. We should be tired after traveling all night, but instead, we feel strangely alert, energized by the journey, even as it ends. Perhaps it is the Mediterranean light, which has a quality that photographers chase, but can never quite capture. Perhaps it is simply the satisfaction of having completed something, of having traveled so far and seen so much. We return to the train station one last time, walking through its grand hall, pausing beneath the iron and glass ceiling. Other travelers hurry past, business people with laptops, tourists with backpacks, families beginning their own journeys to destinations we will never know. The station is a threshold, a place between places, where arrivals and departures happen simultaneously. Our train sits at the platform, locomotive quiet now, steam settled, ready to rest after carrying us across Spain and back. We do not board. Instead, we simply stand, looking at it, remembering the hours spent watching landscapes scroll past windows, the gentle rocking motion that became a meditation, the sound of wheels on rails that provided the heartbeat for our journey. Every journey must end, must transition from experience to memory. The train will make other journeys, carry other passengers. The cities we visited will welcome other travelers. The rivers will continue flowing. The mountains will stand patient, and the vast Spanish night will embrace new dreamers seeking rest. But this particular journey, this specific path through darkness and history, through geography and time, belongs to us alone. It exists in the space between waking and sleeping, between imagination and reality, between the world as it is and the world as we need it to be when rest eludes us. Find your bed now. Pull the covers close. Let your breathing slow to match the gentle rhythm we have followed all night. The train wheels, the water flowing, the eternal patience of stone and tree and river. Spain whispers a final blessing. Que descanses. Rest well. May your sleep be deep and your dreams be peaceful. May you wake refreshed, carrying with you the quiet magic of this night's journey. The last candle gutters and goes out. The final bell falls silent. The train comes to rest on its rails. Steam settling, metal cooling, journey complete. Sleep now, traveller. Let the Spanish night cradle you in its ancient arms. Let centuries of prayer and song and silence surround you like a lullaby. Rest deeply, dream gently, wake renewed. Buenas noches. Good night. Sleep.